Committee to order. The date is January 25th, 2023, and it is 9:17 a.m. And the first item that we have on the agenda is roll call to determine a quorum. Maria?
Ms. Conrad Seda,
Here.
Ms. Faustinos,
Here.
Mr. Friedrich,
Here.
Mr. Rice, Ms. Williamson.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. I will now go over the remote and in-person meeting rules for the day. For the members of the public who are joining us remotely, to observe the meeting, go to trpa.gov. Under the calendar header, click on the Governing Board Hybrid Meeting for January 25th, 2023. There you will find a link to the public webinar hosted on Zoom. To address the committee members directly with your comments, raise your hand in Zoom by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen at the appropriate agenda item. With your hand raised, you will be unmuted by a TRPA staff member and have 3 minutes to address the committee. If you have used the dial-in numbers to join us by telephone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand and be unmuted. To remote committee members, if you wish to speak, you can also now raise your hand in Zoom. You will find the hand icon on the bottom of your screen. Remote committee members may not use the chat box to make any comments and/or to have sidebar conversations. Please, everyone, remember to mute your mic unless speaking to cut down on background noise. Finally, I would also like to ask that all remote members turn on their cameras if they are able. Members of the public who have joined us in person, please raise your hand at the appropriate time for public comment and you will be called on to the front to speak. Committee members who are in person, please raise your hand if you wish to comment and speak clearly into the microphone in front of you. If you are viewing the webinar on a personal computer, please ensure that your microphones and speakers are turned off to prevent audio feedback into the room. And our next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Staff, are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. We will then deem the agenda approved and for the record. Approval of minutes is the next item on the agenda. We are now on agenda item number 2, approval of the minutes. We have a set of minutes from April 27th, 2022. Oh my God, it's been that long since we met last. On page 15. Do any members of the committee wish to make a change? They're here in the room or online. I don't see any. So we will go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes as presented, amended. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, only question of procedure. We get a motion.
So
and then-
yes, okay, thank you.
Having not been on a committee member at that time, should I recuse on that or?
Actually, you don't have to recuse.
Okay, they look good to me, so I will affirm aye.
Okay, so the motion on the table. Ms. Conrad Seda?
Is there a motion to approve already? Because I can offer it.
Yes.
And you can do it by acclaim.
By
for the minutes.
acclamation, yes,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. Okay, so we have the minutes are approved.
Sorry, one more time. Did we get a actual vote? Did I miss a vote?
We did, I thought, but we can go back and do it again. Okay, we have a motion by member Williamson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
any nays? Right, we're good. Thank you. Thank you for your indulgence. This is my first time up here, so we'll keep going here. Okay, we're on to item number 3, discussion and possible recommendation to the governing board on the Lily Lake Multi-Use Trail TRPA file number EIP C2021-0011 Environmental Improvement Program project number 0302020082. So we will have discussion and possible recommendations to the board on the Lily Lake Multi-Use Trail TRPA file number EIP C2021-001 Environmental Improvement Program project number 0302 02-0082. And information on this item can be found on page 495 of the packet. And now I will pass this on to Julie Reagan to introduce the topic.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for chairing this meeting. As you all are indicating earlier in conversation, we have a number of changing committee assignments today and appreciate everyone's flexibility. Again, I'm Julie Reagan, the Executive Director at TRPA. I want to welcome the members of the public and the members of the U.S. Forest Service who are sitting up with us here today. We have a presentation. I will do a few introductory remarks. I will then turn it over to Shannon Friedman from our staff at TRPA. And then I'd love the Forest Supervisor, Eric Walker, and his colleagues and team members here to speak to this before then it comes back to you and the public for comment. I wanted to offer a bit of context. On the agenda today, there are a couple of items that have been we've been involved in for a number of years. And, I'm just about 6 weeks coming up, not even with the holidays in my new tenure as executive director. And this is an item that's been going on for a couple of years. And I think it's really important that we have this discussion around it. We have an information briefing on a large project at the Biltmore site that some of you had the opportunity to see yesterday that goes back, 10, 11, 12 years. And these are really important matters to the community. And I think it's an opportunity for us to have an inflection point of really looking at the compact, how our mission very much is at the heart of a shared responsibility at Lake Tahoe. And that shared responsibility and that shared stewardship truly will come out in the discussion today. We have an abundance of public land. We're very fortunate in the basin to have nearly 80% of the land owned by the federal government, managed by the U.S. Forest Service. Another 10% of the land in the basin is owned and managed by our states of California and Nevada, and also some local governments in the form of public utility districts. So an abundance of public lands gives us the responsibility and obligation to share that stewardship, and conflicts abound in that. That's just the nature of what we do here in Tahoe, and the compact directs us to harmonize those interests and to collaborate for solutions. And that is at the heart of this discussion around a retroactive permit for a trail that is already built. We have a long-standing, decades-long partnership with the U.S. Forest Service here in the basin. We co-lead the Tahoe Interagency Executive Steering Committee, which really is the governance, the shared governance model of our environmental improvement program with the federal government, the states, the local governments, the private sector, and really with TRPA as the heart and soul, as the backbone of that partnership. And we rely on our partnership with the Forest Service, in particular in this program. And this is one of nearly 800 projects in the EIP for context, but it's a really critical project that embodies a lot of these discussions around the future of recreation at the lake and how we manage the resource with increasing pressures, not only from climate change and visitation, but just also the shared stewardship notion that we're trying to all get to as we move into a destination stewardship model for the basin. So I just wanted to offer those brief introductory remarks. Shannon Friedman is a planner who's worked at TRPA for, I think, more than 15 years and has a lot of experience working on these EIP projects. She's going to give you a foundational briefing, and then hopefully Eric Walker from the Forest Service can offer up some words. But I just appreciate the opportunity to tee this up. So thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll turn it over to Shannon.
Thank you, Julie. Good morning, Madam Chair and other committee members. And I would like to say good morning to the public and thank them for taking the time out of the day to attend this important meeting. For the record, I'm Shannon Friedman, Senior Planner in the Environmental Improvement Department here at TRPA. I've lived in the Tahoe Basin for 20 years and, believe it or not, worked at TRPA for 18 years. So in my time at TRPA and in the Environmental Improvement Division, I work with all types of public agencies and nonprofits and the private sector to plan and implement the EIP program. And that includes a variety of projects from stream restoration, habitat improvement projects, watershed improvement projects, and recreation projects such as this one. As Julie mentioned, we are asking the committee to hear this item and make a recommendation to the governing board to approve a retroactive permit for the Lily Lake Trail. This trail was constructed over a few years and completed construction in 2021. And the project did not receive a permit from TRPA at that time, which was an oversight. But throughout this presentation, I will talk about how we have worked with the Forest Service and other partners to identify how that happened and the steps we are taking moving forward to make sure that that does not happen. And it is clear what projects require permits and what projects are exempt through the memorandum of understanding that we have with the Forest Service. The Lily Lake Trail is a recreation environmental improvement project. It builds and enhances the trail network in the Tahoe region, which improves recreation access for all users. It also implements the recreation, air quality, and transportation thresholds that TRPA has, primarily by providing a variety of recreation opportunities and doing so in a way that provides a trail network that allows people to access recreation trails from one spot, reducing reliance on multiple car trips. The trail was approved as a non-motorized multi-use trail, meaning that it allows for hikers, biking, and equestrian use. I do want to highlight the non-motorized component because it does not allow any motorized bikes, including e-bikes, on the trail. Next slide, please. Between 2011 and 2013, the Forest Service prepared the Fallen Leaf Lake Trails Access and Travel Management Environmental Assessment. This EA was the first time that the Forest Service took a strategic approach to trail planning and environmental improvement projects within the Fallen Leaf Lake area. The map on the right identifies the geographic area that the EA covered. The area outlined in black is the area that is covered in the EA. And to help further orient everyone, we are looking at the south shore of Lake Tahoe. And just to the right of this project area, you will see the Tahoe Keys. And to the northwest, you'll see Emerald Bay. So that just helps to orient you of where this plan is located within the Tahoe region. The EA is in El Dorado, the geographic area that the EA covers is in El Dorado County, California, and it includes part of the city of South Lake Tahoe and El Dorado and the neighborhood of Myers, California. So you can see within that project area that Fallen Leaf Lake is kind of the center of the planning area. And the Lily Lake Trail is just to the south of Fallen Leaf Lake. And in future slides, I'll show more images that help identify where that trail is located. In 2011, the Forest Service released a public scoping document to gather input from the public on the proposed action. And they did receive a significant amount of comments on that. They then took those comments to help further develop the proposed action as well as alternatives to that proposed action within the EA. And then in 2012, they released the draft EA that included what suite of projects they wanted to implement as well as alternatives to those projects. In 2013, the Forest Service issued a finding of no significant effect and made a decision on the project that they would be implementing, which is alternative 4 in that EA, which included implementation of the Lily Lake Trail. And again, that was constructed in 2021. In the EA, the Lily Lake Trail is designated as a hiking trail. The trail designation provides direction on how a trail will be designed and how it will be built, but it does not prohibit other uses on that trail. In the EA, it specifically allows for other uses, including mountain biking and equestrian pack and saddle. And states that it will be available for those uses, and unless the EA states that they're prohibited, they're all allowed. In addition to that EA, TRPA staff has worked with the Forest Service over the last year and a half to work on the TRPA initial environmental checklist, which covers all of the TRPA requirements for environmental review, and it does reference the EA to answer most of the questions within that checklist. Next slide, please. So the EA looked at a suite of actions to meet the purpose and need, which was a planned system of shared use, interconnected, environmentally sustainable trails to serve the entire spectrum of non-motorized recreation users. This systematic evaluation first looked at the existing network of trails within the Fallen Leaf area. This included 23.7 miles of authorized trails and 21.5 miles of unauthorized trails. The difference between that is authorized trails are those that are recognized by the Forest Service, are built sustainably, have best management practices incorporated into them where necessary, and have signage included to help users navigate the trail system and meet Forest Service trail design standards. The unauthorized trails do not meet those requirements and are oftentimes user-created trails throughout the forest that are not sustainably built. The EA proposed action looked at that trail network and made the following improvements. It suggested to adopt or upgrade 9.3 miles of those trails, decommission 12.4 miles of those trails, reconstruct 5.7, and then 12.1 miles of new trail construction. The Lily Lake Trail is 1.8 miles of that 12.1 miles of new trail construction. In addition to these trail projects, the plan also included other environmental improvement projects like new parking where necessary, trailhead improvements such as installing best management practices at trailheads that did not have them, and new and improved wayfinding signs to help users navigate this connected trail system so they can access all of these trails through multimodal ways. And when the Forest Service makes a decision on the EA, they're looking at these suite of projects that are identified, not just one single project within that proposed action. Next slide, please. This image is showing the approximate route of the Lily Lake Trail. And again, we are on the south side of Fallen Leaf Lake here. This is a good image because it's showing all the topography that the trail traverses. And what I want to point out here is that on both bookends of that trail, so on the lower section of it, there's a trailhead called the Glen Alpine Trailhead, which is accessed from Fallen Leaf Lake Road and Glen Alpine Road. And that trailhead provides access to a variety of recreation trails, including Desolation Wilderness. On the other north side of the trail, or like the upper section of it, it connects to the Glen Alpine Trailhead parking lot. So this trailhead made a connection to two existing trailheads that did not exist prior to this trail being constructed. And I do want to emphasize that this trail is constructed 100% on Forest Service property and does not go into Desolation Wilderness, which is designated wilderness area at all. It is in the general forest, and multi-use trails are appropriate uses within that general forest. Next slide, please. This is showing how the Lily Lake Trail can be accessed via a loop throughout the landscape, taking advantage of the existing road and trail network within this region. So the portion of trail that is green on the south side of Fallen Leaf Lake is the Lily Lake Trail. And I pointed out the two trailheads that were on both sides of the trail. But then you can also access the trail from Fallen Leaf Lake Road and Glen Alpine Road. But on the east side of it, where I pointed out where the Angora Ridge trailhead was, you could also access the trail from there, or Angora Ridge Road, the Angora Ridge Trail. And then you can see there is a network of other trails that you can use to access this trail, as well as neighborhoods that can access this trail network right from their home. So this just shows how you can access a variety of trails through different access points. And you can just park once and not drive around to different trailheads to access the variety of trail networks that this area has to offer. The trail also combines wayfinding signs to help users navigate the recreation trails from a variety of these trailheads to help them figure out where to get and how they can get there without getting in the car again. Next slide, please. So as I've mentioned, this trail finished construction in 2021. TRPA staff, myself and Steve Sweet, the code compliance program manager, and Forest Service staff did a site visit in May of 2021. We were able to walk a significant portion of the trail while it was actively being constructed. And at that time, we did not see any issues with the way the trail was being constructed or the trail alignment. We reviewed the EA and the trail under the TRPA rules and regulations and realized, and the trail was in compliant with all of those documents. But what we did realize is that the trail should have received a TRPA permit prior to being constructed. And that was just some misunderstanding between the Forest Service and TRPA. We have a memorandum of understanding between the Forest Service that allows them to implement a suite of actions on their land without getting a TRPA permit. And there was some confusion about what type of trails fell under that MOU. And the limitation in the MOU right now is it limits it to 1,000 linear feet in low land capability. We realized that this trail exceeded that 1,000 linear feet in low land capability. And so a permit was required to implement the trail. Since then, we have been working closely with the Forest Service to further identify what went wrong there, and then take the necessary steps to work together to make sure that that doesn't happen again, and that we're both clear about what actions require permits and what actions are covered under the MOU. Since that time, we have also had multiple meetings and communications with stakeholders, including the Fallen Leaf Lake Basin Protection Coalition. We have worked with these stakeholders to answer questions about the EA and about the trail itself. And we've also discussed and offered ways to continue to engage with the Fallen Leaf Lake Basin Protection Coalition, as well as other interested members of the public, to continue to engage on future projects within the Fallen Leaf Lake Basin and surrounding areas. This trail was built by the Tahoe Area Mountain Bike Association, known as TRPA, through a partnership that they have with the U.S. Forest Service. Next slide, please. We're going to hear a little bit more about TRPA today. And so I just wanted to give a little context of who TRPA is as an organization. TRPA is a volunteer-driven nonprofit organization that builds and maintains and advocates for trails within the Tahoe region. They are dedicated to the stewardship of sustainable multi-use trails and preserving access for mountain bikers through advocacy, education, and responsible trail use. The Forest Service relies on this important partnership with TRPA to help with their capacity in building and maintaining trails, as well as advocating for the sustainable use of trails and trail stewardship and education. Next slide, please. This is just some images of the Lily Lake Trail that has been constructed. The image on the left is a technical section of the trail. This section is pretty close to the Glen Alpine Trailhead. And then the image on the right is showing a less technical, more mellow section of the trail. And you can just see the beautiful views and recreation opportunities that this trail provides. Next slide. Part of our evaluation process was looking at this trail in the context of other trails that have been built and approved throughout the region. And this trail is consistent with other shared use trails in the Lake Tahoe Basin. The picture on the left is the Van Sickle multi-use trail. That trail is right here in South Lake Tahoe. It's part of the Bi-State Van Sickle Park. And it is a multi-use trail that sees heavy use from both hikers and mountain bikers. And it does have some technical rocky terrain, not unsimilar to the Lily Lake Trail. The map on the right is the Tunnel Creek Alternative Trail. I'm pointing this out because this is a trail that the TRPA Governing Board approved in November of 2021. It is currently being constructed by Nevada Division of State Parks, and it traverses sensitive lands such as steep slopes and stream environment zones, but is done so in a sustainable way. And so these are just other similar trails like the Lily Lake that have been implemented and improved throughout the region. Next slide, please. TAMBA, as part of their partnership with the Forest Service, installs trail counters on a variety of trails throughout the region. They use a system called the traffics monitors, which are the industry standard for collecting this type of data on unpaved and paved trails. And TRPA and our partners have used it in both of those applications. In 2022, these counters were installed on 7 trails throughout the Lake Tahoe region. This is showing the data that was collected on the Lily Lake Trail between May and August of 2022. And you can see that the maximum use of that trail was 26 bicyclists per day, and that was on a Saturday, so no surprise there, and that the average was just under 20 per day. And I'll point out that the traffic monitors were programmed to pick up metal only, so this data is showing primarily bikers, not hikers. Unless the hiker was carrying something metal, it wouldn't pick them up. So this is showing solely mountain bike use on this trail system. And as I said, it is the industry standard. It's used throughout the United States, Europe, and Canada, and is an accurate representation of the trail use. Next slide, please. As I had mentioned, they installed these counters on 7 trails. This is just showing trail use data from a few different trails within the area, including the Corral Trail, which is the line in black, and the Christmas Valley Trail, which is the line in blue. And these trail counters are important because they help implementers identify what trails are getting the most use and where they can put their efforts towards trail maintenance, trailhead improvements, etc. Next slide, please. This is the result of a recent recreation use survey that TRPA staff did in preparation for the regional trail strategy that is currently being developed. Between June and August of 2021, surveys were done online and at popular trailheads to gather information about where people were accessing recreation trails and how they were getting here. Or getting there. And what I want to point out is the image on the right, those hotspots are showing the really popular areas where people are accessing trails. Oh, I wish I had a pointer. So the one in kind of the south, the area that's really blown up with like the yellow dot and the red one, that's the Corral trailhead. So no surprise there, because based on the previous slide, you can see that that is a really popular trail that people use. And then to the north on the upper left corner of that, you can see Emerald Bay, which no surprise there either, that that is an area that is heavily accessed for recreation. You can kind of see Fallen Leaf Lake in the middle of there, and that the areas surrounding Fallen Leaf Lake are popular areas to access recreation. And this just shows it's a different data set, but is in line with the data that the trail counters provided as well in terms of the most popular trails and trailheads. Next slide, please. This is just one of the iconic views that a user will see when they are recreating on the Lily Lake Trail. This picture shows Forest Service staff and TAMBA out there planning the trail and choosing the best alignment that is most appropriate for this trail that will protect the environment while also providing a high quality recreation experience. Next slide, please. So I had mentioned that we have an MOU with the Forest Service, and this trail did not fall under that MOU because it exceeded the 1,000 linear feet. Part of the process to improve how we work and coordinate with the Forest Service was taking a look at that MOU and revising it. The recreation section of that MOU had not been updated since 1999. So it was prime time to take a look at the language in there and update it appropriately. So we are currently in the process of doing that and updating that language to provide more collaboration, better coordination for trails planning. TRPA is currently in the process of developing the Tahoe Regional Trails strategy with a suite of partners. A coalition of Tahoe and Truckee partners are developing the regional trail strategy for a connected and accessible trail network that spans land managed by numerous agencies and link Tahoe's backcountry, front country, and urban areas. This coordination by local agencies and organizations is more important than ever as we see more people coming to Tahoe to recreate on our world-class, trails, lakes, all the awesome opportunities that the Lake Tahoe region offers. The trail strategy will provide a guiding vision for a regional trail network that will be used by land managers, public agencies, and nonprofits to plan, build, fund, manage, and maintain trails in the Tahoe Basin. And it will include a mapped inventory of regional trails and trailheads, a connectivity analysis showing where there are gaps in the trail network. And the board will have an opportunity to learn more about the strategy in the coming months as staff presents it as an informational item. In addition, the projects that are identified in that trails strategy will be included in the environmental improvement program. This trail strategy helps partners identify the priority list of projects to implement over the next 5 to 10 years. And it's agreed upon by all of the EIP partners. And all of those projects will be included in the EIP tracker as priority recreation EIP projects. And that EIP tracker is a great platform to track all types of information on projects from planning to implementation, funding, the partners involved in that project. And it is a wonderful public interface that provides information to the public. So the projects that are planned over the next 5 to 10 years are transparent to all the agencies and the public at large. With that, I'm going to pause and turn it over to Eric Walker, the forest supervisor, to provide some additional comments.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, Madam Chair, committee members, and the public. Thank you for having us here today to talk to you about this action that we were asking you to consider for recommendation to the governing board. Michelle did a fine job of summarizing all the history, because this history precedes my role here on the Lake Tahoe Basin Management Unit. I do have with me Mike Gabor, our forest engineer, and Jacob Quinn, who is our Trails Program Manager, to be able to provide any additional information, answer questions. And since they were here during all elements of the trail planning as well as trail execution. I would like to say that we're here before you today, and I'll plead my mea culpa here, is that this is a one-off. This is truly an anomaly. And talking with TRPA staff and staff here on the forest, we've not had this happen before, where we've not been in complete alignment and moved out before accessing necessary permits. So I want to assure the members of the committee, the board, as well as the public, that this is not a standard operating procedure, and do not anticipate this to be something that you'll have to address in the future. And as Michelle pointed out, we are working on updating the MOU so that we have greater clarity and understanding. Elements of this project was, that there was a reconstruction of a portion of this trail, and as well as a new portion of construction to bring the trail to that Glen Alpine trailhead. Because one of our goals in providing sustainable recreation and access to public lands is that connectivity that Michelle referred to, that we have 2 established trailheads, the Angora Lake Trailhead and the Glen Alpine Trailhead, but we did not have a meaningful connection connected those two across public lands. There was I believe another trail that goes down to the old the church location there, crosses private property, and we don't have authority or jurisdiction there. So we felt that for greater connectivity to those existing trailheads, which is one of the things that I think is an element that will be discussed in the strategy or revealed in the strategy, but one of our own efforts as an agency is to put those trailhead connections in out of neighborhoods as much as possible and along major transportation corridors as we try to implement, sustainable recreation and transportation opportunities in the basin. Additionally, the need for these trails, and it was discussed in the purpose and need of the document, is not to create and attract more visitation. We know we have plenty of visitation to the Lake Tahoe Basin, but is to actually disperse and put that trail use across a broader landscape so that recreational experience is optimized. As Michelle's one of her map showed, the Corral Loop, that is a highly used, highly congested area. We know we have other trail areas like this, but by developments of like Lily Lake Trail and others, we will be able to take existing uses and spread them out so that we have adequate trailhead parking and the facilities at those trailheads, as well as a better recreational or user experience on that trail, because we will hopefully have that use spread out over a greater area and over a greater amount of time. So those are some of the reasons that we get into looking at these trails. It's not with the purpose of how many more people can we attract to the Lake Tahoe Basin. It's to actually manage the existing uses we have with an anticipation that just normal growth patterns and use patterns, we anticipate there will be more visitation to the lake, and how do we accommodate that in a sustainable manner. So as I said, this is not our normal MO. So we come to you after the fact. I feel that the work that we've done leading up to this event or this current issue that we're addressing, we've been very successful. We feel that with the committee's recommendation and board approval, that we can move forward on this. As Michelle mentioned, that the trail strategy, a more comprehensive look to how we develop and manage trails in the basin. We are also working on a trails analysis, environmental assessment currently that will look to how we manage some of our existing trails, look at opportunities where there are new trails to maintain that connectivity, trailheads, and then also address with the increased use of e-bikes, where and what type of e-bikes may be appropriate on our trail network. So we are, looking at this in a comprehensive manner, now and going into the future. With that, I would like to provide any opportunity to my peers here, if they had anything that they needed to correct that I may have gotten wrong, or provide an addition that would be helpful for your consideration and also available for any questions you may have. And Mike or Jacob?
That one. Thank you, Eric. The only correction I have is Michelle is actually Shannon. That was really hard to sit here and see how many times. I think Jacob and I are going to have a beer for each one of those later.
And I need to buy those.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I do
My
want
greatest apologies.
Michelle Clickard is talking later.
Yes.
I think both Shannon and you, Eric, provided some excellent background in terms of what this project is, how we got here. And I think one of the things I'll add, and then Jacob will probably be mostly answering questions later about some specifics potentially. But this particular area had been a hole in our planning efforts when I got here in 2008. We hadn't addressed this particular location in the basin for planning trails. And it in fact was a conglomeration of a bunch of purchases that the Forest Service had made over many decades. And so to provide a comprehensive trails plan, we went forward with this effort. During that effort, I had learned that there were staff at our organization that had tried to do this planning effort in the 70s. And there was a number of things that there were still some blanks in the land ownership, so we weren't able to complete that at that time. And in 2012 and 13, when we did finish the planning, it was pretty exciting because we thought we had done a lot of collaboration to achieve that particular planning document. And over time, we learned how we can do things better and how we can do a better job collaborating with stakeholders and partners on these projects. Hence, some of the things that Shannon and Eric were talking about, where we're going to be looking at trails, not only based on why within our agency, we have a planning process for that ongoing right now, as well as with TRPA and some of the other stakeholders and agencies for a basin-wide trails plan. And our goal is to be as transparent as possible with how we're doing that to come up with a trails plan that the community really supports. And I think I'll leave it there for now.
Madam Chair, if I may, just to wrap this up, I know we have a lot of interest from the community and we want to hear from the public on this. Just to connect a couple of dots that were through lines in that excellent presentation by Shannon and by our Forest Service colleagues. The item before us today is the trail retroactive permit, but it has really shined a light on areas for improvement. And I want to emphasize our commitment to making those improvements in the delegation MOU, the exemption MOU that we talked about with the Forest Service. And so we are working on that at staff level, and we'd be happy to bring back an information briefing later after we work through the final issues there. And then another through line of improved transparency. I think that was a key takeaway from this multi-year discussion with the community. And I really want to thank the members of the community that are here today. People like Ruth Rich and Dr. Kleppe and trail advocates that are sitting in the audience as well. It's shined a light that we need to be more transparent about these dirt trails. We've been very focused on paved pathways and class 1 trails in our EIP, but the real last several years where we've had the community come together around a vision for trails that connect to, dirt trails connecting to paved trails. That has really been evolving in the last few years, and there's an opportunity for us through this to learn from that and to make it more transparent through our Lake Tahoe Info EIP tracker. So we're committed to that. I just wanted to underscore that, and thank you for your attention. I know this took a while, but we wanted to make sure that we provided all the facts that you needed to discuss the next items.
Thank you, Julie. So now I'd like to go to the committee members to see if we have any comments before we take public comment. Mr. Friedrich.
I'll save my comments till after the public comment. Just, I guess, a question, are there any circumstances in which an EA would be required for a trail segment such as this within this planning area or another, as trails in similar topography, length, impact, trail access? Are there any circumstances in which an EA would have been required had this been done from the beginning?
Good question. Thank you. As we had mentioned in the presentation, this Lily Lake Trail was evaluated under the EA that looked at a variety of actions. If a land manager like the Forest Service or others were proposing to implement just one segment of trail on its own, independent of other actions, it would not be typical for an EA to be done. Example of that is the Tunnel Creek Alternative Trail that I referenced. That trail was implemented as one single trail to provide an alternative to people hiking and biking the Tunnel Creek Road. And the environmental analysis for that trail that did go through sensitive habitat as well was done through an initial environmental checklist. And so that would be the standard that would typically be used for TRPA for analysis of one single trail project. Similarly, the paved network of trails that we've discussed, when they are implemented as one individual project, those are for TRPA evaluated under the checklist as well.
I think we have a question here from Ashley.
Not much of a question. Thanks, John, for asking that one. That was helpful. More just, appreciation for the transparency that you're providing now and just the acknowledgement that sometimes these things happen. And so, I'm looking forward to hearing the public comments before we go further. But this is my first EITP meeting, so thanks for an interesting one and one that makes me very excited for backpacking season.
Great. Thank you, Ashley. Any other committee members wishing to make comments? Okay, then we're going to move on to the public comment portion of this item. If any member of the public wishes to address the Environmental Improvement, Transportation and Public Outreach Committee on this agenda item, please raise your hand now or click the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or by dialing 9 on your phone if you're on the telephone, and you will be called on and unmuted by a TRPA staff member. I think first we probably want to take the comments from here in the room. So anyone wishing to make a comment, if you could step up, and then we'll just have people come up to the podium as each member completes or each. Okay, great. Excuse me, you need to turn on your mic.
Oh, there we go. I'll learn. Okay. I'm
And if you could
42
please
year-
state your name for the record.
John Kleppe. I'm a 42-year resident of Fallen Leaf Lake and considered a newcomer. And Ruth,
I'm Ruth Rich and I'm a lifelong resident. I'm not going to disclose what that equals. And a 32-year-old resident of South Lake Tahoe in the Angora Highlands neighborhood.
and we are representing the Fallen Leaf Basin Coalition Protection. And that group was formed because fallen leaf tends to be the canary in the mine. And I think the canary died when we found what happened with the fallen leaf trail. And it is, with what Eric's done, supervisor, and Mike Gabor, I know most of you people that we've dealt with, and we've had wonderful relations with the Forest Service, working the dam and et cetera. But we're here to explain what fell through the cracks. And really, the MOU was designed to help them do their jobs with the trails without having to have a permit at every more. But this one was larger and required it, but it fell through the cracks. So we're here, and I'm going to do a slide presentation to give you an idea from the viewpoint of the fallen leaf residents, what we saw. So next slide. The fallen leaf basin is made up with a red line. And the red line shows you every drop of water, like the Rockies goes east and west, every drop of water inside the line feeds Fallen Leaf Lake. So you can see that runs down the Angora Ridge up into the desolation area. And on the west side, the desolation area continues around Fallen Leaf. So those slopes are very sensitive. In Fallen Leaf, there's new data showing in sediment cores we've done that the sediment rate has increased dramatically, and it's in publications in 2018 since humans started developing the Fallen Leaf area. So maybe the slopes have already reached some kind of limitation on what can be done without having more sediment. Other things, sediment that goes into the lake doesn't reach Tahoe is another theory that isn't true, because Taylor Creek in a study was shown to be the 5th worst contributor to sediment loading of all the 51 tributaries in the Tahoe Basin. So that's the concern. It doesn't act like a big best management practice and sort out the silt that comes from disturbing the shores and the steep slopes that are sensitive. But that's not really brought out because Fallen Leaf is a small microcosm of the whole basin. But we can help with the increased pressure on coming up with ways to control it. Maybe you don't let just everybody, maybe you have different ways of transporting people. But here's what disturbed us. Go ahead, next slide. There's the trail going up the steep slope that's right above Fallen Leaf Lake. So continual disturbance, and I appreciated these slides on what the use is, and the use isn't much, but it will grow. And that's because of social media. Tampa has been saying this is the place to go, the beautiful sights. We can look over a 75-foot cliff and it attracts people. But old people like me are not going to ride from Lily Lake up. You're going to ride up, down. And so you typically may put a car down below and drive up, and then the people go into neighborhoods to park in order to ride down it. So these need to be incorporated in an environmental statement. Next slide.
Can I add something there?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Excuse me. If you can go back, I'm sorry. There was mention, I don't remember who said it, of the church trail out at Fallen Leaf. That's the trail that goes up from between the chapel and the firehouse. That and what we know as the Clark Trail out of Fallen Leaf, which goes up to the lookout, and has been decommissioned or was supposed to be years ago, because it also, those two cross over private property. The church trail will never be unused. It is so long established. The trail that's behind, actually, my husband's and my little cabin that goes up to the lookout, that one is extremely slippery, dangerous. There are, just loose dirt and all sorts of stuff up there that's going to cause somebody on a bike or a hiker to fall down the hill. And that was the reason, that plus the private property crossing was the reason for the mention of decommissioning those two trails in exchange for constructing this one, whether or not we're talking about bikes or not. So that whole ball of nuts needs to be looked at really carefully. I mean, to predicate building a new trail on ones that will never be not used isn't a great strategy. And what has resulted is you have people creating their own loop trail. Now bikes are going up and down much more frequently, the church trail. And I have seen many people using the Clark Trail, the one up to the lookout as well, and trying to tell people that's actually not a trail. They're trying to find it on all trails. It's been, I've been directed here. So it creates problems in this little tiny canyon that really leaves people only the road to go out. And the road, if you haven't been there, is narrow and it cannot be widened when it gets through the private property areas, which flank the lake. And that's a big problem. You have people on bikes riding across 3, 4, whatever, and not all of them understand it's a road. They function like it's a bike trail or a bike path. And you've got conflict there too. You have conflict going up and down the trail. You have conflict on the road. You have conflict with use of trails that aren't supposed to be used. So thank you. Next slide.
Okay, next slide. Basically, we try
Excuse
to
me,
be
just
su-
very quickly, you are at 5 minutes already, so if
Okay.
you could try to wrap up as
Okay,
quickly as
let's go
possible.
quickly
Thank you.
then, just run the slide. You can see that as we go through how it was constructed was made it horrified residents. Keep going. And and this is the way that rocks are moved. And I noted, just looking at it, there was no mitigation for possible future erosion or rainstorms. And certainly the project going through wintertime, keep going, you can go to the next slide, is going to cause significant erosion. Well, we won't know really, I guess, until this major snowpack. When spring comes, there are disturbances that we're not during the construction phase, and in the future, we need to consider that. Like any construction site needs to be winterized according to TRPA standards. And keep going, you can go to the next one. And the use of the machines. So bottom line, I felt it was worth demonstrating the concerns, and these were posted and actually by TAMBA on their website, and they're to be congratulated for all they've done to trails, and along with the Forest Service and the money and the funding for the maintenance. But we have to do this carefully.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments.
The last slide, thank you. That is really what we would advocate for. Actually, before you consider issuing a retroactive permit, please undertake a true comprehensive environmental assessment to look at all the impacts.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Do we have additional persons in the audience that wish to make comments?
Is this on? Yes, of course it is. Hi, my name is Lyda Hayes. I have a residential cabin up at Fallen Leaf Lake. And I've been working with Jacob for a while and asking him questions. I've been doing it for almost 3 years now. And I'm concerned because when I looked at the checklist that you did, Shannon, you kind of glossed over the parking issues, bathroom issues, trash issues. That's a huge, huge problem. And we're already getting a lot of people, obviously, but unless we get a Harrier service to bring people in and they rappel down to their bike trail, we're going to have people bringing their SUVs in with their bikes because it is way too dangerous to take the fallen leaf road on your bike. I don't know if you've done it. They almost took my head off a couple of times. I bike, I mountain bike. I love it. I do all the snow sports. I am very, very active. And, most people don't recognize me because I usually am wearing a helmet, but it's the kind of thing where I think it was wrongheaded. I sent this in. It's a picture of a guy getting air, which I do a lot, but I do it not in an area like Fallen Leaf Lake, which is so conscribed, it's so tiny. And honest to God, someone says on your left, and they've already almost taken me out a couple of times. And honestly, I've almost taken people out a couple of times. This isn't Bijou Park. If you want to go out and shred and do crazy things and try your tricks, go into a controlled environment like that, or go someplace when other people are not walking. And they're going to have horses too. Holy Mary, have you ever been on a horse when a bike comes up? You don't want to do that. They're prey animals. They don't like that. So anyway, I'm just saying that there wasn't any structure. There wasn't any platform put down. There wasn't anything for parking, for bathroom facilities, for trash receptacles. Gary Guerin, the fire chief over at Fallen Leaf Lake, he's understaffed. And, as a resident there in the summer, I'm pulling people out of the lake all the time. I'm pulling people off of the trails all the time. Luckily, I know CPR. Luckily, I know a little bit of EMT stuff. But my God, I think what this has done is opened up a whole vista. And it, like Dr. Kleppe said, it's the social media has made this a fabulous place to come. But if we build it, they will come, but we have no place for them to park, no place for them to go to the bathroom, no place for them to get rid of their trash. They're high rocking themselves, they're hurting themselves. And I think that we need to address that too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional commenters? Thank you. Just state your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Morgan Steele. I'm the executive director with the Tahoe Rim Trail Association. And we've been in the basin since 1981, building and maintaining trails. And we work really closely with many of the partners in this room. And just wanted to start and say thank you all for your time on this really important issue. One of the big things that we talk about a lot at the Rim Trail is balance, and really trying to find a balance between the needs of all of our recreational users and the landscape. We really want to see that these incredible places that all of us want to come and recreate and visit are preserved in the future, so that the experience that we have today, the next generation can have 50 years from now, 100 years from now. So when we looked at the trail like Lily Lake, this was a really great opportunity for us. It's an option for us to spread out users. We've seen over the last 10 years that I've been with the Tahoe Rim Trail Association, a 5-fold increase in the number of users on the trail. So it's huge. We're not going to be able to stop the number of people coming into the basin for these recreational opportunities. So we just need to find a good way to, as someone mentioned, spread those users out, provide options for them to use to hopefully mitigate some of these impacts and really find ways to educate people so that they don't have negative interactions with different users. And that's something we're really committed to. We have a staff of 10. We have over 350 volunteers that are our community members that are really committed to the recreational system in this basin. And so when we look at the Lily Lake Trail, it's a great option for us. People can connect to trailheads that are already existing. It's a huge problem for the Tahoe Rim Trail specific trailheads. We don't have bathrooms at our trailheads, which this Lily Lake Trail connects to 2 existing trailheads with bathroom facilities. That's a major impact. So it's really nice to see that. And again, it really comes down to balance and being able to spread users out, have options for loops. On a personal level, I've used this trail several times. And the lovely thing is I've never had to drive out there. So we do recognize that that's a really popular place to be. But again, by building this trail, we're now able to access that without a car are, which is a really nice piece. And also, as I mentioned, we have 40 years of trail building in the Tahoe Basin, and this trail itself, I know there's some photos there of the construction process. When you get out there, a lot of it is straight up on rock, which is a really great way to be able to address some of those erosion problems, because we do know that that's a huge issue for our region. So just want to say thank you, and then really urge you to approve this retroactive permit, because it does help our overall trail system. And we just have increase in use, and we need to find options for those folks, because if we don't, they're just going to go where they want anyway. So by doing a well-constructed, well thought out, well-evaluated trail, hopefully we can spread those users out and avoid having those social trails proliferate. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another speaker?
Cool. My name is Patrick Parcell, and I'm representing today the South Lake Tahoe Trail Running Club. I formed it in 2013, and it's been remarkable since then to see the development of our trail system as a whole. I remember visiting the Tahoe area when I was young, and there were very few options. Everyone was congested on the same exact trails, or they're using social trails. And so to have a trail like Lily Lake, where now I live on the south side of Angora Ridge, I can leave my house and not have to get in my car to drive over to the Glen Alpine area. I can go for a run out my back door, up and over Mule Deer, down Lily Lake, don't have to go on any roads like I used to have to. Our trail running club now is over 500 members, a lot of folks who live here locally and people who visit. And the folks who live here locally, this is the draw for people to live here, is to have well-connected trail systems. The folks who visit say they wish they had this where they lived. And so I just really appreciate all the work the Forest Service has done, the TRPA has done to help improve sustainable recreation opportunities. The other thing I'll add is I've been doing trail work professionally for more than a decade. And one of the highlights now when I have friends come up who work on trail crews around the country is say, you got to check out Lily Lake Trail, because it is really a work of art. It was done to standard, follows all the industry protocols. Moving rocks is very difficult work, and you saw it in those photos. It's very impressive. Those are volunteers out there doing that. When people come out and they say, wow, like, how does this happen? And it's frankly in those photos like that where you see people in the dirt moving the rocks. And so, yeah, I just want to say, I hope you have this retroactive permit. And since this trail has been built, I can think of 1 or 2 times that I've gone out and actually had to park back there. And that's just if I want to go further into Desolation Wilderness. I do mountain bike as well. And I will say that I might ride that trail like once a year, but it's really a good connectivity piece to get out there. And I think the bigger thing, and I totally relate to the folks who live out there, is a bigger management has to be done with trailheads and parking in general in the basin. And that's why I really appreciate the work that's being done by the TRPA on the trails plan currently to try and address these issues. And other places I've been where they have really good permit systems where they only allow the number of people that can park back there would be a great alternative, because I've been back there and parked and it's a nightmare to get out of there. And so I would not wish that on anyone who lives back there to have increased traffic, but they're all alternatives that do not prohibit access to users to access public lands. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Do we have another commenter? Welcome.
Hi there, Chris McNamara, resident business owner here in Tahoe. And just from a big picture, TRPA has to address some really big things: transportation, town centers. I know this because I've been trying to work on the Ski Run Town Center, and it's going way slower than we thought, but we're optimistic. But what gets me optimistic are all kind of the small wins where I see the community really coming together. Lily Lake is the perfect example of that. From the transportation standpoint, I now never have to go drive my car out there. Every time I go out there, it's usually, I've got 1-year-old and 3-year-old with a kid in a backpack. I can now start on the Mule Deer Trail, go up and over, avoid all the roads. All the roads getting in there are narrow and not super fun with kids. And from the community standpoint, we don't have those town centers yet. We all have a shared vision for what that will eventually look like. We will make it happen. But what we do have are these events where people come together. when we were building Lily Lake Trail, we had volunteers out there. We had fundraisers at South Lake Brewing. We had all the different parts coming together to kind of have these kind of mini downtown Tahoe events together, which was so cool. I love the trail experience, but to be honest, I like the people coming together, the Forest Service, the TRPA, everyone coming together, making these things happen. The last thing I just want to say is I come from an area where it's a zero-sum trail game. This is in the Bay Area. And what I mean by that is often it's this user group against this user group. It's hikers versus bikers. It's private owners versus the public. It is not fun. One of my favorite parts about Tahoe is how inclusive we are, how we get along for the most part. Almost every non-wilderness trail in the basin is a multi-use trail, which is so cool. You see all these people, for the most part, being able to share and be together. And for me, that is such an amazing culture that we have. It's one that I don't think is an accident. And I also think it's not just going to be there on its own. It takes kind of consistent effort to say, how do we work together? How do we see challenges and overcome them in a way that brings us together and doesn't make things exclusive to one user group or another? So I really look forward to seeing this trail approved and continuing this idea of having a very inclusive trail system with us all working together and working things out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments, please?
My name is Andrew Bray. I'm the executive director with TAMBA. I'm also the head coach for a youth mountain bike team in our community. We have about 60 kids and about 30 coaches in that team. It's part of a group of about 500 kids and about 300 coaches in areas that surround this community. One of the things that we all strive for with either the leadership with TAMBA or with the youth coaching is building stewardship of trails, advocacy, etiquette, and all the things that make this whole shared trail experience professional, enjoyable, and a good day for everybody. Lily Lake is an awesome trail. It addresses a lot of things that every trail in the basin needs to do. It has parking and bathrooms at each end of the trail. It has connectivity for those that like to ride further so that you can access all points of the trail without having to leave your home. I live close by to that area. I get to see a lot of different interactions there. I see people park in all different areas, and it works very, very well. I do not hear any use conflict coming from that trail. I'm sure that there are some occasions where there's a surprise, or maybe somebody is not having a good day, but I have not heard that. Comments come back through the TAMBA community to us, or from the residents at Fallen Leaf that I talk with. There are more than a few residents that I've engaged with as I live close by that community that are supportive of the trail. They say, we like it. We can make a loop. We can go up the church trail, go down to Lily Lake. We enjoy it. The views are amazing. The views are world class. It checks so many boxes for what recreation at Tahoe should be. The trail is well designed. The trail is on a hardscape. There were certainly some impacts when the trail was built, but they were minimal. If you access the trail now, you will see that there is very little erosion concern. There is very little concern with the snow melt, et cetera, because the trail is an amazing construction project, as Patrick alluded to, constructed of rock. It's going to be a trail that will last a long time and provide enjoyment for many, many generations to come. I would like to say that I hope that we're able to get the support of the board to get this permit issued retroactively. It's unfortunate that it was overlooked in the process because there was a lot of good energy that went into the design, the planning, the community outreach to achieve the status that we're at now with this trail. Provides connectivity. It provides access for all members of the community. We take our kids out there. I ride in and out on the Fallen Leaf Road. It's narrow. You got to watch what you're doing. But in all honesty, a bike will get you through there quicker than a car on most days. You need to be safe. It's our job. My job as a coach with these kids, and we're working with the high school for even further involvement now with the community, to teach these kids the next level of stewardship, get support for this trail, and show that this is a smart and a strategic investment in outdoor recreation for Tahoe. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, do we have any comments online?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have a few hands raised. First hand up, first name Peggy. Peggy, if you unmute, you can address the committee. Peggy, I can see you're unmuted. I'm not sure if you have the correct microphone linked to your Zoom.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello. Thank you for, great. I had a few photos that I was unable to figure out how to provide. And if it's possible to do a screen share, I would love to be able to do that. If not, I'll just go ahead and make my points. First of all, I'm a part-time and full-time resident of South Lake Tahoe, and I grew up around Fallen Leaf Lake. My family has a cabin there that we've used for 3 generations now. And I think what I want to say to you is that there are certainly many good points made on both sides to advocate for the trail, but some more serious considerations need to be presented. And I would encourage this committee and the board to really take heed to the concerns raised by some of the first presenters. The report in itself, I was able to read, but I find a lot of details lacking and not a true accurate representation of what the trail has and what it has become. The first fault I saw is that the design standards were to adhere to a class 2 hiker pedestrian trail, and it does not. It deviates from the standards, and the decision notice and those authorizations were not followed because of that deviation. And the trail, in what is mentioned in the permit that you need to look at, is described as being 18 to 24 inches wide, I believe, where the trail is actually more than 3 feet wide in most areas and up to 6 feet wide. The multi-use, there are no standards that describe a multi-use in the U.S. Forest Service handbook, only for bike use or different classes or horse and saddle and for pedestrian use. And I think that the committee needs to really take a serious look at what they are approving. There was a lack of oversight, and the trail was constructed without public input when it changed its inherent purpose. There now exist several deep ruts, dangerous turns, and there's actually a bicycle jump that is on the trail, which I have a photo of. They took down many trees that weren't necessary and natural obstacles that would slow down the speed. So my main point is that the report lacks credibility or the full scope of the project. And because of this, it was built not as authorized, although it claims to be built accordingly. And there presents many, many safety concerns. And there have been incidents of that I have heard where there have been conflict of use problems between bikers and hikers, and I don't know about horses. And I see that my time is up, but my final point is that I think it was pretty much recklessly built with no public input to a change that was understood to be built as one way, but there was sort of a glossing over and lack of public involvement that I feel that really needs to be reviewed. So I would hope that you do not approve a retroactive permit before you have considered how the trail would need to be changed to adhere to the authorized criteria. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
The next hand raised is Jeff Campen. Jeff, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Good morning. Glad to be here at the meeting. I'm going to address the report because I think there are multiple issues that were raised that are not addressed. Number one that was talked to by Ruth Rich and John Kleppe is that the EA cited to two trails that were to be decommissioned. They were not decommissioned in the final decision notice. That served as the justification for the new trail. That's under the comments by the Forest Service themselves and responding to the public in the decision notice. Number two is that the EIR and EA are inadequate. It's over 10 years since that has been done, and mountain biking has just blossomed, specifically on this trail. The public and generally Fallen Leaf Lakers were clearly under the impression this trail was going to be a hiker pedestrian thing. And I don't think you'd be seeing any horseback riders on that trail. Number three, procedurally, the Forest Service did not take permits out for this trail, as they admit. But moreover, they didn't take permits out for trails AN1, AN2, AN3, and AN10. So none of the trails that have been built on the Angora Ridge have been issued a permit by TRPA. This is clearly an error and oversight, and it's a failing on TRPA's part. We're concerned with the thoroughness and objectivity of the report because it doesn't address the issues. We understand that this issue would not have been public today had not it been for our efforts to move it forward, because we objected to the administrative approval that was recommended earlier by the body. We do not agree with the report findings. Environmentally, we think that there are problems because of the age. We think something ought to be done about that. We think the trail doesn't adhere to the conditions under the Forest Service trail management and trail plans. We think the trail is not safe for mixed use as it is designed. And we have a number of people who have told us so. We've had 2 reported injuries on the trail that had to be addressed by the fire department. In the EA, it cited that this area was focused on and has an increasing demand by the public for recreation. And that was 10 years ago. Now it's much worse. We see that we don't see an option that people talk about parking. There's no parking when you go up there unless you get there before 8
Mr.
o'clock in the
Chapman,
morning.
if you could wrap up your comments, your time has expired.
Okay, in conclusion, we do not recommend the permit. We think that it ought to be, the trail ought to be designated as a hiker pedestrian trail, no mountain bikes, monitoring be instituted, and fines be issued for violations. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers?
Yes, Madam Chair. John Gore, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay, my name is actually Jonathan Gersh. I am also a long-term cabin owner up in the Fallen Leaf Basin and have enjoyed many of the trails around the Fallen Leaf Lake and the Lake Tahoe Basin as well. I would like to echo the recommendations that my colleagues have made with respect to not approving the permit retroactively as proposed by the staff. I will be really brief. If you look at the map of the trail that has been provided by numerous people, you can see that this is a very steep trail. It's a sensitive area, and there are no wetlands or any buffers at the bottom of that steep slope. There's no way to buffer any of the erosive impacts of this trail on Fallen Leaf Lake. Professor Kleppe has indicated that Fallen Leaf Lake is a major contributor to the clarity of Lake Tahoe Basin. The Forest Service is not charged with protecting water quality of Fallen Leaf Lake or Lake Tahoe. You are charged with that. And so I would strongly recommend that this committee take a careful look at what are the water quality impacts of this trail on Fallen Leaf Lake and Lake Tahoe as part of your duty under TRPA and your statutes. If you look at the environmental assessment, I'm sorry, the checklist that your staff did, there are no mitigations proposed. And it simply says that there's no impacts from that, but there's no evidence that they've even evaluated that. The environmental assessment, the FONSI that the Forest Service did was over 800 projects as provided by your staff and 14,000 acres. There was no individual evaluation of the erosive impacts of this trail. It's true that it is over some hardscape, but it's also over talus slopes, it's over forested areas, and it's recognized that this is a sensitive area. Your staff's response to our concerns about the water quality impacts of this trail is it was constructed with best management practices. That's not sufficient. Come on, if all other trails and permits that you look at, there is an individualized assessment of what this project will do with respect to the water quality. I think you need to stop, make this right, look at what the water quality impacts of this trail are. Don't approve this trail as a bike trail because we know that bikes increase the erosive capacity of a trail. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further speakers?
Madam Chair, there are no other, oh, sorry, one hand just went up. Doug Flaherty, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Thank you, committee chair and committee members. Doug Flaherty for the record, TahoeCleanAir.org. Cumulative impacts result from the tyranny of incremental impact of small decisions when added to other past, present, and reasonably foreseeable future actions. Regardless of what agency or person undertakes such other actions, cumulative impacts result from individually minor, but collectively significant actions taking place over a period of time. TRPA and its government partners, all of them, continue to be an active participant in the tyranny of incremental impacts, void of adequate environmental analysis to protect all that is Lake Tahoe. Currently, 84,092 acres of Lake Tahoe waters and 30 miles of the Truckee River are listed under the Clean Water Act as impaired waters. And the Lake Tahoe water is designated as an outstanding national resource water. The impaired water listing is due to 3 pollutants, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment, all of which are responsible for Lake Tahoe's deep water transparency loss. One of the issues here is that the TRPA has failed to carry out its monitoring responsibilities, especially since the 2012 regional plan. The TRPA continues to fail to do a cumulative impact analysis since the 2012 regional plan. And basically, the Lake Tahoe Basin is out of equilibrium as required by the compact, out of equilibrium and harmony. So anyway, this is where we're at. Massive projects, massive trails, more. And you guys all go along with this like lemmings jumping off a cliff. We're in environmental free fall here and you can't see it. You can't see the forest for the trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers?
Madam Chair, there are no other hands raised online to comment on this item.
Great. Now we'll move back to committee comments and possibly a motion. Mr. Friedrich.
Yeah, I'd like to offer Shannon and the Forest Service team here an opportunity to respond to a couple of the comments in particular. The status of decommissioning of the social trails that was analyzed in the 2013 EA and the degree to which new trail segments such as Lily Lake were to be conditioned on that decommissioning. And then any kind of information we can share on monitoring of erosion on trails, Lily Lake and others.
Thank you. I'll start and then I'll offer the Forest Service an opportunity to add comments. First, on the decommissioning of the trails, I'll provide some more clarity on that. In the public draft EA, the proposed project did include decommissioning the Church Trail and the Clark Trail, which provided some access between Angora Ridge and Fallen Leaf Lake. Those trails were part of the miles of trails that were not Forest Service authorized trails in their EA analysis. In the proposed action in the draft, they did recommend decommissioning those trails and building the Lily Lake Trail. Based on public comment and the fact that portions of that trail go through and terminate on private property, the forest supervisor decided to pull that out of the final action that they approved. So it approved construction of the Lily Lake Trail, but did not propose decommissioning of the Church Trail. The Clark Trail, I'm going to let Forest Service speak to that because I'm not sure if that was actually decommissioned or not. So that is the reason why they kept it in the action. Can you repeat what the second?
Monitoring of
monitoring.
erosion of Lily Lake and other trails in the area.
Right now, there's not monitoring required on that trail. The permit does not include that. I will say that one of the benefits of having these trails be authorized trails is that they are meant to meet design standards, and Forest Service is committed to maintaining those trails. And part of the important relationship with TAMBA is that they have the capacity and the ability to go out and do trail maintenance in addition to the trail building. With that being said, I think it is reasonable to include in the permit some times where this trail and potentially others are evaluated to see if there are maintenance activities that need to occur to keep that trail to the design standards, to keep them sustainable and reduce the environmental impacts from that trail. Do you guys have anything to add?
Eric Walker, U.S. Forest Service here. I'm going to ask Jacob Quinn to come to the mic and respond to your question, John.
All right, thank you. Jacob Quinn, U.S. Forest Service. Shannon characterized that very well. Our original proposed action was to decommission the Clark and the Church trails. We were concerned with environmental sustainability, and we were concerned with crossing public lands, or excuse me, crossing private lands with no easement. Based on overwhelming public comment at public meetings, which weren't captured in that presentation, we did have several public meetings, as well as written comments. It was clear that those two trails were extremely important to the community. And there was strong opposition to decommissioning them. In one of our alternatives, the one that we selected, we determined that it would be appropriate to not decommission those trails, to build the Lily Lake Trail to provide sustainable public access that does not cross private land. We did not actively decommission the Clark Trail. Really, it's just fallen out of favor. Use patterns in that area have changed. People have started using other trails, including Lily Lake. What needs to happen on Clark Trail and on Church Trail is really maintenance, just long-term maintenance that has been deferred for a number of years. Those are actions that could happen at any time. That's just part of managing a trail system. In terms of the monitoring component, in addition to using the most current available research, using our trail management objectives, trail management handbook. We also have hydrologists on staff that conduct BMP evaluations on a subset of roads, trails, facilities projects every year. They've determined that the actions that we take when we build and maintain trails to our standards have no measurable impact. Essentially, they're hydrologically invisible for the most part. Lily Lake Trail was built to that standard. And I don't believe that it's a random subset that we monitor every year. I don't believe that that particular trail is in that subset. But just to describe, we do have an internal monitoring process that's done by hydrologists to inform whether our BMPs are effective or not.
I would like to add, if I may, that in talking with staff, that the trails that were identified to be decommissioned in the final decision have been completed. So we have, done all the work that or most of the work we've said we're going to do. I don't know if there's other maintenance or construction, but as far as the decommissioning, and as Jacob pointed out, the 2 trails that, based on public comment, we did not bring forth in the decision.
Great. Follow-up question?
Yeah. Thank you for that information. That's helpful. An allegation was made by one of the public commenters that the Forest Service didn't take out permits for some new trails. That's I think it was, he said AN1, AN2, AN10 or something like that. Could you just respond to that comment?
Without having the project map in front of me, I won't address those specific locations. What I can tell you from memory, because I created some of those maps, most of those trails that were identified were considered reroute or reconstruction of existing trails. So they would have fallen under the MOU. They wouldn't have required further permitting. They may look different on the ground because of those reconstruction or partial reroute actions, but they did not require permitting.
And I will just add to that MOU piece that a lot of the actions in that EA did fall under the MOU. Deconstruction of trails falls under the existing MOU. And if a trail is a reroute, is 100% a reroute or a reconstruction of an existing trail, that does also fall under the existing MOU. And other ones did not traverse as much linear feet in a low land capability district.
Thank you. Any further questions from committee members? Don't see any questions online. So at this point, we would be considering a motion on this item. Is anyone prepared to offer up a motion? And we have that here on our screen here. We have 2 motions that will need to be made.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the required findings, including the finding of no significant effect as shown in attachment A.
Roll call vote on this motion, please.
I'll just make a quick comment
Sure,
before we vote.
absolutely.
I just wanted to acknowledge everyone who's come here and been involved in the issue on both sides of the concern. I mean, I do think there's a kind of a universal issue we have in the basin about getting to trails outside of a car. And I was impressed by the number of people who said they bike or walk to this trail, and relative to trails further afield, that's an opportunity that I encourage the Forest Service and all of us to promote and to, in a congested area like the Fallen Leaf Lake and the road going in there, to whatever we can do to get people out of their cars to access those trails, and promoting on the South Shore that this is a place you can get to outside of your cars, and whatever we can do to support that through additional transit connections in the future and whatnot. I know I'm sure the city and the El Dorado County would be happy to take a look at some of those opportunities. I guess I am convinced by the BMP standards that the erosion issues are not significant, and that also that if this were to start from scratch, an EA would not be required, and that the trail has kind of met the requirements of the checklist for the most part. That being said, I think we've all heard the concerns of the community and the extent to which we continue to address those, to minimize those impacts and continue the conversation on the variety of topics. I think, I'm sure that will happen. I would just encourage that as this go forward, but I'll be prepared to support the motion for those reasons.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Williamson.
I just want to say thank you for pointing all of that out. That was really well said. I agree with you on all of that. I also think it's really important that this issue be heard by the full board, which is part of why I made the motion. I think that we did some good work in committee, but I'd really like to hear from the full board on this as well.
Right.
Thank you.
I will also just chime in here to say that I really appreciate all the members of the public that came to testify today. Really important for us to hear the different perspectives. I am very, just supportive of the fact that the Forest Service, I think is, more than willing to work with all community members on this issue. And I would just say that this is something that, in my part of the world, which is in Southern California, trail issues and those that are multi-use are always, problems that may occur, come to our attention all the time. And I think it's by working together. I think as several of the commenters pointed out, it's by working together that we can resolve these issues, because access to trails is for everyone. And we do have constraints at times that we have to work with, but I really feel that staff and the Forest Service has done a good job of identifying where those constraints exist, and that we have an opportunity here to use a trail that is going to be for all to use effectively. So I believe we have a motion on the floor, and we have a roll call.
Ms. Conrad Seda,
Yes.
Mr. Rice, Ms. Faustinos,
Yes.
Mr. Friedrich,
Yes.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. And then we need a motion on the second item.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to recommend approval of the proposed project subject to the conditions contained in the draft permit as shown in attachment B.
Okay, any comments on this one, or can we move forward to a vote? Okay, all right, please.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Friedrich,
Yes.
Ms. Faustinos,
Yes.
Mr. Rice, and Ms. Conrad Seda.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
We will now be moving on to the next topic on our agenda, which is agenda item number 4. And it's informational only. And I believe, Julie, you're going to give us that report.
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the Forest Service. I know Supervisor Walker has to move on, but his team will be staying for the full board presentation. So thank you all very much. And I'm going to invite Michelle Glickard to join us. One of the goals for our committees and our agendas and preparations for you as policymakers is to highlight what's coming down the line, what topics are in the queue. So Michelle is going to share a few, and I do believe we do have some members of the community who are here to make some public comment related to some of them that might be coming down the line. The item's not, one of them is about the US 50 corridor, but I will let Michelle queue up some of the other items for you, and that'll wrap us up for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Michelle Glickard, Transportation Planning Program Manager. So I'm going to quickly walk you through, provide you a list of upcoming transportation planning topics over the next 6 months or so. Next slide. So for February, okay. This one. Okay, sorry. Too quick.
No, my fault.
That's okay. I'll start talking. She'll catch up. Rachel Shaw, who joined the transportation team recently, will be providing you with background on the update to our 2019 Lake Tahoe safety strategy. We're going to be seeking your support for a Vision Zero commitment that will lead the charge for the plan update that's starting tomorrow. This is a strategy document. It focuses on improving safety, one of our regional plan goals. And then I'm also going to be walking you through the transportation performance framework that we've developed for the next regional transportation plan and VMT monitoring report. You guys might remember that. That was one of the recommendations that came with the regional transportation plan approval. The full report will be back before this committee at the end of the year. Carl Hasty, with the TTD District Manager, will be providing the committee with an update on Tahoe Transportation District's latest transit planning. And related to transportation, although at the full board, Kira Smith from the team will be leading an equity study working session. And in March, following up to the 89 corridor plan, Rebecca Cremeen will be providing on the Highway 89 trail feasibility study, a briefing to you all. This is about connecting the last segment of the Tahoe Trail on the West Shore. And then another one of our planners, Judy Weber from the team, will be seeking recommendation of approval on a federal transportation implementation program amendment. This action is a Tahoe MPO administrative item, recording funding changes to current transportation projects. Related to transportation, again, tentatively scheduled for March at the full board is a project impact analysis workshop. We'll be helping John Hester out with that one. Next slide. And then moving into April, you know, as we get a little further out, things may shift a month or so, but we wanted to give you that overview of topics to come. Currently, our plan is to provide a briefing on the Tahoe Trail strategy. You heard a little bit about this earlier this morning. And we're also going to be provided a briefing on the Tahoe Regional Grant Program project selection. That's a resolution through to the TMPO, another one of our TMPO items. And then Nick Haven will be providing a funding initiative update. And then a little later into the summer, I'll be providing an overview of the next fiscal year transportation planning overall work program. That's that larger document that lays out everything that we're going to do in transportation planning, from products. All of the things I'm talking about here today fold into that overall work program. And then in the summer, we'll be bringing back that Vision Zero safety strategy update, seeking a recommendation of approval to governing board. As well as a little later in the year, briefing on the active transportation plan update. All of these plans I'm mentioning today, they're going to be rolling in that framework and that report I mentioned. This is setting us up for our next regional transportation plan. So the active transportation plan is also getting a kickoff tomorrow and will be updated. We'll be bring a briefing back to you on that one. And our latest planner, Ryan Murray, will be leading the charge on that. And then this last item, Julie was kind of teeing it up for me today. We have another transportation item, the US 50 East Corridor Management Plan goals, focusing on safety and initial outreach. Many of the committee members here heard that at the full board back in August. The project team has reached hundreds of individuals, and with more outreach this past winter, on draft concepts for the corridor, the project team is continuing to incorporate public comments received, and I think you'll hear a few more of those today. So with that, that's just a quick overview for you all. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you very much. Do we have any questions from committee members? Sounds like it's going to be a busy year. That's my big comment.
Yeah, so you notice we gave you a break in May, but we'll be preparing for Bike Month. That's in June. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. But we have a full team, which is why I was trying to highlight that. So I'm pleased about that. We've got a great team to get things done.
Great,
Thank you.
Okay, now we will take public comment on this item if there is any. And if any member of the public wishes to address the Environmental Improvement, Transportation and Public Outreach Committee, oh my gosh, that's a long title on this agenda item. Please raise your hand either here in person or by clicking the raise hand button on the bottom of your Zoom screen, or by dialing *9 on your phone, and you'll be called upon and unmuted by a TRPA staff member. So do we have any individuals who would like to speak? Please come to the podium.
Good morning. My name is Brett Tibbetts. I'm a 12-year resident of Cave Rock. I'm here today to oppose the TRPA and NDOT plan to switch Highway 50 in Douglas County from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. I know that they're adding, the plan is to add bike lanes and a turning lane. My problem is the reduction in the vehicle traffic lanes. So why are we appearing here today? In 2017, NDOT held a meeting at the lake to discuss this plan. There was overwhelming opposition to that plan in a public meeting. So then they laid low for a while and came back this past fall and winter and held listening tours
that wasn't a listening tour. It was just a plan to obfuscate the public opposition. These plans at the Kale Center, you walked around little rooms. There was no public hearing, no place for people to voice their opposition. So the community became very active. Of the 2,000 people in Douglas County that live at the lake, I've talked to at least 400. I don't know anybody that supports the reduction of the lanes. Everybody supports bike lanes. Everybody supports turning lanes, but you've got to figure out a way to do it without reducing the lanes. The second problem I have is the TRPA staff going around. It's overstating the amount of support for this project. It's talking about all these meetings. I don't know when and how they took place, but it's to me very overstated. The third problem is the duplicity of the TRPA board. You say in your articles that reducing car use has long been a regional goal, but then you're approving all these massive projects, which cumulatively, as the gentleman said earlier, add a massive amount of traffic to the Highway 50. So we've got the new event center, we've got the Tahoe Beach Club, we've got the new Latitude 39, and then we have the relocation of Barton Hospital to the Lakeside Casino. And you guys want to narrow the lanes? It makes no sense. I'm very glad for a new governor, for a fresh look at this. I'm very glad for a new NDOT director, because hopefully we can get some sanity to this project. Thank you.
Any additional speakers? Please come to the podium.
Good morning. My name is Andy Huckbody. I'm also a 12-year resident of Lake Ridge, and my house overlooks the north end of Dead Man's Curve. So we watch those cars spin as they come down going northbound. I am opposed to the NDOT plan to narrow the roads, but more importantly, put a concrete barrier along the west side of Highway 50. There are about 50 openings, driveways, streets, and vista points, which would have to open that barrier up. That would create 100 opportunities to hit that concrete barrier head on. Some people call that K-rail or New Jersey rail the death rail, because the serious accidents on 50 are the head-on collisions when people spin to the other lane. But now we're going to have a concrete barrier, which will also stop those cars from spinning. I don't recommend an additional barrier in the current footprint of 50, which my understanding is NDOT is not willing to widen the road. So we basically have to work with the area that we have, which makes it more dangerous. Really, safety should be the only reason to make a change to the current configuration on Highway 50. And there's many things we can do to reduce and make 50 safer, starting with the reduction of the speed limit in certain areas, around the curves, in some of the areas that most dangerous, and then enforcement. We could improve enforcement using the digital radar speed limit signs, which makes people check their speed. I'm sure if you drive down 50 even today, some of the lanes are actually narrowed down to 1.5 lanes. So when you come around the corner, some people that aren't familiar with the roads get fairly surprised that there's no place to go other than into the left lane, which can cause an accident. So we need more enforcement. And I think we can work on the parking, not only the hiking trails, but also around our beach areas. Causes a safety issue when the people park on the side of 50, if we could create more parking off a highway in those areas would make 50 safer. And there is some areas like Lake Ridge, we have room to add turn lanes. We have fairly big side road. Where again, they try to put up stakes to prevent people from parking there, but they get mowed over by the snow plows. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Beth Wallace. Excuse me, I have a cold. I'm a 10-year resident of Zephyr Heights, and I would like to go on record encouraging the TRPA to readdress the issue of lane reduction proposed in this corridor management plan. I was a faithful participant in all of the outreach sessions that have been hosted by DOT starting in 2017. I did not see or hear at any of these sessions any support of lane reduction along our stretch of highway. If residents are one of the stakeholder groups, and I personally feel in this situation, we should be the major one, we were not heard. I've requested a compilation of all the comments, our sticky note comments that we left at these meetings. I've requested them from the DOT several times. I have yet to receive them. You're going to hear many reasons. You've heard them, why residents oppose lane reduction, but I'd really like to focus on just one, and one that should be our primary concern. In one of the DOT's brochures, they cited safety as a priority. And one of the key metrics or data points that they used and that they had analyzed was this: lane reduction would add an average of 2.2 minutes to travel time over 13 miles. I don't imagine that's a hardship for most commuters, for visitors, or even me to drive to the post office. But I would like you to ponder these questions. What do you think 2.2 minutes means to the fire department traveling towards a home in Cave Rock to put out a fire, or for police responding to an emergency? What do you think that 2.2 minutes means to a stricken individual being transported from Glenbrook to the New Barton Hospital at State Line? And what do you think 2.2 minutes means to thousands of residents along this corridor during a fast-moving fire? We have no side streets. We have no optional exits. We only have Highway 50. Let us please learn from the impact of lane reduction during the Paradise, California fire evacuation several years ago. There are several suggestions for what we can do, but in closing, I'd like to remind you all of that classic movie, Field of Dreams from Iowa. I bring it up a lot. And one of its most famous lines is, "If you build it, they will come." I heard another public comment on that. Well, the city of Tahoe, TRPA, Douglas County have built it. You've built the event center, you've built the condominiums, you're going to approve a new hospital. So trust me, they will come, but most will come in cars, many along our corridor. Please do not compromise the safety of the residents you are here to represent by reducing lanes. Please reconsider the issue of lane reduction on our corridor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. I would like to speak again here against the Highway 50
Could you,
East Shore.
excuse me, could you
Oh,
please state your name
Elizabeth
for the record?
Learnhardt, Zephyr Cove, 7-year resident. I would again speak here against the Highway 50 East Shore CMP plan and the lane reductions, as my previous speakers have, and I concur with everything that was said before. So I would like to point out some obvious things that haven't been mentioned. How do you reduce car accidents? Use a horse buggy. If this sounds simplistic, what do you think bicycles are? We've heard today how and witnessed about another trail and the conflict from bikers and hikers. You're going to create more of these conflicts. Just because there's a lobby pushing for bikes doesn't make it a valid option along Highway 50. Did you, either one of you, come with a bike today? Well, why not? It's probably the snow, but that's something that doesn't go into the planning either. So why are you prescribing the road diet? Oh, I have this paper just to prove what South Lake Tahoe does in the snow with bike lanes. So why are you prescribing the road diet to Highway 50? A road diet is defined by reducing multiple lanes to 2 lanes and repurposing the gained space for other things like parking and bike lanes. It is obviously not because you or some other people want to hike in a winter day around the lake. Besides, road diets were not designed for single access roads like we have here. Without collaterals, no ways to escape. They were designed for a traffic density that was much lower than we have, and they were designed for inner cities. Scooters, as you mentioned in your plan, are also not an alternative for transportation. They are a recreational business hijacking public funds for their own benefits, in my opinion. Listing the number of scooter trips doesn't prove there was one single car less used. And just on the sidelines, I don't know if you know that, but these people who operate these scooters in South Lake Tahoe, they're hiring students to recharge them on their landlord utilities. Similar questions arise about documenting reduced traffic to Sand Harbor after you completed the incline Sand Harbor Trail. You repeatedly base your plan on EVs without understanding the limitations as far as extreme temperatures, lack of refueling station, and the efficiency. The AAA says that at freezing temperatures, which we have a lot in Lake Tahoe, 41% reduced efficiency. And as long as the refueling is not as fast as gasoline, you just add another parking lot to your plan. Most importantly, just because it's an EV, it's not reducing traffic. It's still a car. Do not commit the same mistake that caused Southwest Airline meltdown over Christmas. Going woke and forgetting your real business model. Efficient transportation. That's what it should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers?
Yeah, I am Robert Byron. I reside in Hidden Woods near Cave Rock, and I have attended and spoken at all of the NDOT public hearings and listening tours and before the Nevada Transportation Board in opposition to the US 50 East Shore Corridor Management Plan, or CMP. Page 98 of the 2020 TRPA Regional Transportation Plan provides a summary of the Nevada US 50 East Shore Corridor, the transportation challenges, which are many, and TRPA's vision for addressing these challenges. Under the quote, future focus, your plan calls for completion of the NDOT US 50 East Shore CMP. So unlike the Douglas Board of County Commissioners, you seem to be on board with these plans, or at least encouraging their completion. The TRPA RTP vision statement reads, and I quote, the US 50 East Shore Corridor provides safe and off-street transportation with connected pedestrian and bicycle paths, transit service, sustainable recreation access, and connectivity to the many neighborhoods and businesses from within the region and from neighboring regions. What the TRPA plan does not state is a desire to create dedicated multimodal cycling, walking lanes at the expense of the existing 4 lanes of traffic, while also narrowing the width of the remaining 2 lanes. Look, as a formal avid cyclist, I am all in favor of off-road lanes for pedestrians and casual cyclists. The East Shore Tahoe Trail is a good example of a multimodal trail that runs parallel yet independent of Highway 28 near Incline. Similarly, the Sawmill Bike Path runs independent of Highway 50 near Myers. But understand that serious bikers will not use such restrictive multimodal lanes. Rather, they, and I should say we, prefer to use the road shoulder to the right of the white line or share the road to do our training. Why? Your own transportation plan shows pictures of a father and daughter walking along a bike trail and Lime scooters with inexperienced and often reckless riders also sharing these trails. Add high-speed bikes and e-bikes to this, and you will have the type of accident that forced me out of this sport a few years ago with a fractured pelvis, badly shattered collarbone, and 2 cracked ribs. According to the CMP, serious road bikers have no alternative but to share the one remaining lane of traffic with cars, trucks, and buses. These motor vehicles will thereby be forced into the center lane to pass, which creates a much more dangerous condition when the car approaches from the opposite direction behind a blind curve and tries to make a left turn from the same turn lane, say into Snug Harbor. And what about the cyclist? The little shoulder that does exist now will be taken away according to the present CMP and will be replaced by a steel barrier, affording the serious road biker no real escape route. If the NDOT CMP is designed to reduce the number of serious accidents, it will fail miserably.
Sir,
My
if you could-
recommendation.
If you could just wrap
Yeah,
up
I
your
will.
comments.
My
thank you.
recommendation is that the TRPA divorce itself from the current plan and use its influence with NDOT to come up with a more reasonable approach that retains the 4-lane thoroughfare. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comments in the room?
Hello, my name is Kirk Ledbetter. I'm a lifetime resident of Lake Tahoe. My family first came to Lake Tahoe in the early 1900s, and my Nevada side family came in the 1940s. We've owned businesses that have come and gone on Highway 50, one being Harvey's Resort Hotel Casino, operated by my family from 1944 until 1999. Along with my wife, Debbie, we still own several properties along Highway 50. My family has attempted to work in a positive way with TRPA and NDOT to improve Highway 50 and the Lake Tahoe corridor. With the loss of a second lane in either direction, recent snow and windstorm problems at my house with a leaking natural gas line and the need for NV Energy to access it with their line trucks to get the trees off the power lines and restore the power to the energy grid, it would have been severely compromised. The NDOT study is silent regarding drainage problems and sediment control measures for the changes along Highway 50. We all want our roadways to be properly maintained and safe, but the NDOT study maps do not provide a clear understanding of how the lane reconfiguration will improve the roadway. The concept of adding a bike lane is concerning and should be located to an alternative location separate from Highway 50. Adding a middle turn lane and improving roadway turning points would help with traffic flow. But reducing sections down to 2 lanes will cause long streams of vehicles and people trying to pull onto the highway from the side roads or from the driveways will be blocked and unable to get into that traffic flow lane. This will replicate the problems that we see on State Route 28. And as a past business owner, I understand the negative impacts reducing highway 50 lanes will have on the Tahoe economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers here in the room? Thank you.
Hello. My name is Debbie Ledbetter. I co-own 1193, 1210, 1218, and 1220 US Highway 50, where the decorations are for the holidays, with my husband Kirk for over a 23-year period. As my husband mentioned, he and his family have also owned properties and businesses going back to the 40s and 50s on Highway 50. I believe this allows us to have much knowledge and insight to the past and current conditions on the Highway 50 corridor. It does not escape us how lucky we are to live in such a beautiful place like Lake Tahoe. We would like to thank those of you who are truly concerned with the lives of our family, friends, and neighbors who live on Highway 50 and want to make it safer for all of us. As you must be aware, it is a lifeline of our community to access every kind of service in and out, travel, and most important, evacuation in the event of an emergency. Paradise, California comes to mind. Not to mention the livelihood of many businesses and residents on the east and south shore of Lake Tahoe. I can tell you we have witnessed many changes on this highway year to year, season to season, which has logistically impacted our roads. We share the Highway 50 corridor with the following: semi-trucks, large and small, delivery trucks, of all sizes, work trucks, construction equipment, utility trucks, emergency vehicles, fire trucks, buses, limos, campers, trucks, trailers, and cars of all sizes and shapes, motorcycles and bikes. Please forgive me if I have forgotten to mention any other type of vehicle, and that sometimes can be all in one day. Most tourists, regardless of what they are driving, cannot navigate safely on Highway 50 year-round. I have witnessed the worst winter driving conditions in 2 months since living here: overturned cars, trucks, cars abandoned, snow removal slow or non-existent, removal operators who do not know the highway or know where to put the snow, which has created poor driving conditions and leaving 1 to 1.5 lanes at best. Many locations on Highway 50 have become treacherous. I can tell you I have witnessed many accidents on this highway. In fact, last summer, personally rescued 3 drivers from Highway 50 as a driver was hit pulling out onto Highway 50 from a driveway. As I was helping to extract them and pull them to the safety of the shoulder of the road, I thought I was going to die. Cars whipping around us onto oncoming traffic. Surely I would have been run over if the road was 2 lanes, and it would have impacted access to emergency equipment and vehicles. This is one example of more than I can count over the years. It only makes sense to add a middle lane for drivers to turn in and out of safely onto Highway 50, add a turn lane at our neighborhoods, add law enforcement, and move the bike path completely away from the highway. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One more speaker.
Ellie Waller, I'll be a little more brief. I am the Valley commuter. I'm a Douglas County, Carson Valley resident now. I come to these meetings, I commute 50. I recreate and go to meetings on the North Shore. So I experience 28 and 50 intersection as well as the roads here. The last meeting, the roads seem to be somewhat reduced because snow removal is sometimes impossible. People were using the center of the highway because there's no striping with the inability to get the snow off as a passing lane, both directions. It wasn't exciting. It was really, I was very uncomfortable. With that said, I think the reason why many of us are here today is I read the NDOT funding sources for 23, 24 fiscal and 24, 25 fiscal, and they are planning on restriping the highway. It is a lot of our beliefs that this restriping is going to be the lane reduction. Michelle, thank you for bringing what you're going to do the next 6 months. I think this needs to be elevated. Look at the NDOT funding, figure out, is NDOT really planning on doing this restriping without this public input? We're not here to waste your time. We're here to be part of the process and part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think we have one speaker here and then we'll go to you next. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is David Thompson. I'm a 30-year resident of Glenbrook. And pulling out from Glenbrook onto Highway 50 right now is taking your life in your hands. There's with the speed of the traffic coming down there is amazing. And every time I go there, you have to stomp on the accelerator to get out there and avoid all the traffic. And if you look either way, coming out of Glenbrook, you probably have maybe a block or a block and a half of visibility. That's all you got. These guys are coming around the corner, all of a sudden they appear. And so I think that the Nevada Department of Transportation must be the first department in the world of transportation to try to make the assertion that one lane for a busy road is better than two. It doesn't make any sense at any level. And I ask you to decline their proposal. Also, NDOT came over to Glenbrook to make a presentation. It was supposed to be a 15-minute presentation and then Q&A. They came over, they spoke for an hour and exited, no Q&A at all. So they got a check on their checklist that they presented to the community. They didn't ask for any input from the community there at all.
Thank you. Please.
Good morning. My name's Greg Stevenson. I'm a neighbor with Brett Tibbetts in Cave Rock. My family's been in this area for 60 years. I've lived in Cave Rock 30 plus years. My observation this morning is I'm not very well prepared, other than I am a propulsion engineer by degree and by profession. I build reconnaissance drone engines for our Department of Defense. I was the guy that wrote the white paper in 1990 when I moved here, Emission Follies Subject to Lake Tahoe. TRPA acted on that by banning two strokes on the lake. That was a step forward, but now we have clean transportation from outboard motors and personal watercraft that represent state of the art. All the other areas were left mute, meaning diesel powered vehicles, off-road vehicles, and so on. Today's issues on Highway 50 are extremely complex. We're talking about way more than horse trails. We're talking about all sorts of vehicles, different duty cycles, different fuels, different transportation methods. The other thing that's missing, I don't see a clear set of objectives written by anybody anywhere. What is going on? You can't possibly structure proposals without objectives well learned. Thirdly, there's no workshop between the public and the governing bodies. We're missing it. We owe it to our future generations to get it right. Those that built Highway 50 as it stands today did a hell of a job. Look how long it's really done. Very, very functional. So my request is take a step back. Let's get a community workshop to address these issues properly and get a clear state of objectives. If safety is our objective, a tramway or a railway would be undisputed. But if our freedom of travel is equally concerned, then we have a lot to consider, because as we heard earlier, we are in the electrified age. We have electric vehicles that suffer in our cold temperatures. And the truth is, in transportation or propulsion, it is the whole spectrum of energy. The pine needles on the ground have energy to contribute to transportation if you did it right. we're just not thinking. Last thing, we all have cars, we all change tires. Where does the rubber go? Wouldn't you think by now there'd be piles of rubber on the sides of the road? Turns out the emissions from tires is consumed by a microorganism that NDOT has never even studied. How's that for a solution? Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments here in the room? Okay, please.
Madam Chair, while we're waiting, Julie Reagan, I just wanted to make sure the public knew with no action was
No
being
action,
taken.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, this is an informational item only, but staff is taking notes and we'll be reviewing these comments later. Thank you. Please go ahead.
My name's Sydney Morrow and I also live in Glenbrook, Nevada, and I'm also here to comment on the Highway 50 Corridor Management Plan. We've been working with Melissa Chandler and Brian Gant at NDOT and Michelle Glickert on these proposals since early 2022. And I really want to thank the board for the efforts that your employees have been making with us. That being said, Glenbrook still remains opposed to the CMP in its present form. We're most concerned, as the previous speaker said, really about the lack of credible data upon which decisions are getting made. We've asked NDOT numerous times for the background information upon which they are making their safety claims, and we've never been able to get anything from them. And I'm a scientist, so that's always a red flag to me when I can't get the basic background information on what you're making your claims on. In their latest publication, NDOT quotes the Federal Highway Administration as saying roadway reconfigurations are proven safety countermeasures that can reduce crashes by 19 to 47%. These are made, that statement is made on the basis of a case study publication by the Federal Highway Administration, and you can find it on the internet if you go look for it. The reconfigurations under which those statements were made are 25 scenarios that have been installed on low to moderately trafficked roads in urban settings on 4-lane roadways. Reno is one of the cities where they've been installed. Low to moderate traffic means the road carries less than 15,000 vehicles per day. The typical speed limit on the roads that were studied is 30 to 35 miles an hour. Now, does that sound anything like Highway 50 to you guys? The last average daily traffic count that NDOT published on 50, no segment of Highway 50 carries less than 15,000 vehicles per day. There hasn't even been one attempt to put these road configurations on a mountain road, much less a busy US highway. It is an experimental technique. The US Department of Transportation advises added caution and approval of the plan before attempting. I too am asking you to go back to NDOT and ask them for the studies they give you that they're using to make their claims on, because bad information leads to bad decision. And one last statement about emissions. One study has looked at emissions with these road configurations, and you know what happened to them? They went up by 19.8% because cars in a single line of traffic sit there longer than 2 lanes of traffic moving quickly. So you have emission standards you're trying to achieve. I'm not sure this is the best way to try to do both of those same things. So please go back to NDOT and ask them for more information.
Thank you. If there are no further speakers here in the room, well, it's like we have one more.
Thank you, Madam Chair and fellow board members. For the record, my name is Janet Murphy. I have been the administrator of, God, that was a hard, she said half of the stuff I needed to say. I've been the administrator of Tahoe Douglas Utility District. Our office runs all of the utilities of the sewer and drainage along this 13-mile corridor that we're talking about. I sit my office at Dead Man's Curve. I'm not sure if you know where that's at. But I'm here today, hopefully, to give you light at the end of the tunnel, legitimately, since I'm at the tunnel. And I have an alternative. And the lady that had just spoke before me, a lot of the data is correct. The data that I got on the alternative that I want to present in front of this board today has that data. And thank you. I really want to thank you for doing your homework. Thank you for doing your homework. It was the National Federal Department of Transportation's where I also received it, and I've conferred with the second in command of NDOT, Darren, who also has confirmed, yes, it is correct. So I want to let you, I'm going to pass this out. I don't know if I give it to Michelle so you can all see the alternative. Is that okay? First map, of course, is this is the first one that you'll see is the NDOT plan. The alternative that Tahoe Douglas District has come up with, which NDOT now and their consulting firm Wood Rogers that they hired is also looking at it. And we had a meeting last week and they seem to be pretty good on board so far. They have also, to let you know, they have postponed any striping until 2024, 2025. This is what I was told at my meeting from Melissa, who represents NDOT, and also Mr. Gant, who's their engineering consultant at Wood Rogers. The alternative is a little hard to see because it's in a small print. I can get you bigger print. Still remains 4 lanes. Still remains 4 lanes. What they do is they reduce the width of each lane, which will also give you a center lane, which also reduces in crashes. This reducing the lane width also, what it does for some reason psychologically, it reduces people's speed, which makes it safer. You can also reduce the speed limit from 45 to 40, which means that your center medium can be less for a turning lane also. In NDOT's contention, in every safety manual that they have, what they try to do, just at the last meeting, their director had stipulated in front of our new governor and the board, what they try to do is to create a center lane because why? It divides the oncoming traffic, reduces crashes, and it gives the people on the side for turning on and turning off of highways.
You're out of time.
Ugh.
So if you could wrap up just real quickly.
Okay, anyway, I can't say I've been along here. I'm not fifth generation like the Ledbetters, but we're like 4th generation, so I've been here forever. And I've been a 12-year also. I represented all of the utilities and the township at the state level. And number one, when you're in utilities and we are a regulatory agency and we need to be a stakeholder and at the table with TRPA when it comes to something like this, because the sewer infrastructure, like I said, is in that highway. You put a K-rail there, Jersey barrier, I'm on the fire department. We call those death rails. Doesn't work. I can't access the sewer. I can't maintain the sewer, and it goes along with the stormwater. So having that lane can't do it. It won't work. So I'm trying to give you an alternative with a walking, biking path on each side.
Thank you.
If you could look at that and call me so we can work together, but I want to right now today on record, I want to be included before any decision is ever made on the East Shore that Tahoe Douglas District is included. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I hope we can now go to speakers on the phone.
Madam Chair, there is a hand raised. Nick Spiel. Nick, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Hello, my name is Nick Spiel and I live in South Lake Tahoe, and I'm on the board of directors of the Lake Tahoe Bicycle Coalition. I'd just like to speak up in defense of the US 50 East Shore Corridor Management Plan. We have suffered for decades under the dominance of car-dependent infrastructure, and I commend the project staff for taking the initiative to start to provide other options that are safer and more sustainable for the long term. I've been pleased to see the new protected bike lanes in the project proposal. I have been pleased to see the new bus service proposed. I have been pleased to see the proposal for road diets and infrastructure changes to slow the average traffic speed to comply with the posted speed limit. I'm frustrated with the panic around lane reduction. We have all sorts of single lane highways that are just fine. Echo Pass is 1 lane, Kingsbury Pass is 1 lane, even good chunks of this same highway over Spooner Pass is 1 lane. It's fine. Thank you for taking this initiative to make this dangerous section of highway safer and more inclusive to all.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers?
Yes, Madam Chair, Doug Flaherty. Doug, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Doug Flaherty with TahoeCleanAir.org. I'm going to make these statements from my experience as a fire battalion chief living and working in the Santa Ana Canyon in Orange County. The reduction of lanes in Highway 50 basically will jeopardize the health and safety of existing residents and visitors during a wildfire. This is a recipe and a design for disaster, since I can assure you, panicked wildfire evacuation could easily lead to significant injuries and loss of life, not only on a reduced Highway 50, but on many of the two-lane roads around the basin. The concept proposed will dramatically increase the odds that residents and visitors alike will unsuccessfully compete during increased panic for access to clogged evacuation routes, resulting in little or no way out of a denser Tahoe population basin, of which the TRPA continues to promote. This, since the possibility of current safe and workable evacuation within this area and the basin is currently questionable due to an already overcapacity road systems. Fire evacuations ensue panic, of which often results in immediate collisions and smoke, which hamper and block access and egress, along with dangerously clogged roadways from fire apparatus. This is a common phenomenon, and it is beyond any common sense whatsoever that the TRPA would continue to carry out the plan of lane reduction in this case, or in other cases, increase visitor capacity on some of the other roadways in Tahoe. I just want to let you know that I witnessed many times what almost immediately happens during panic smoke situations. Cars almost immediately collide, rear-end each other. That causes the car behind them to rear end the car in front of them, and on and so forth. For the Cave Rock folks, it's only going to take one car, one accident during smoke and panic, and you've closed off your evacuation route. So thank you so much. I hope the TRPA would consider public safety over whatever process that you envision here for transportation in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have any additional speakers?
Yes, Madam Chair, first name Gavin. Gavin, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Hey, good morning, TRPA committee. This is Gavin Feiger, on behalf of the League Disabled Lake Tahoe. We weren't planning on commenting on this item at this point because it's not agendized, but the proposed corridor management plan for Highway 50 East meets many TRPA objectives, including reducing vehicle miles traveled, reducing dependency on the private automobile, achieving a VMT threshold, improving water quality. I could go on, but I think you'll see over 2023, as TRPA takes on the transportation equity study and takes on the Vision Zero effort, the improvements, and I call them improvements, to the State Route 50 East between Spooner and State Line will help achieve many TRPA and NDOT goals. Leaving it as it is will not help achieve any goals. I appreciate that, and thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Any more speakers?
Madam Chair, there are no other hands raised to comment on this item.
Great, thank you. I'll bring it back to the committee members for any final comments. John, please.
Yeah, I'd like to give staff an opportunity to provide an update on the status of this corridor management.
You need your microphone. Yeah.
Oh,
I had the wrong button pushed.
Yeah.
The other one, I'm not even sure what that's for. Sorry. John Friedrich.
Could you provide an update on the status of the NDOT corridor management plan? I know the MPO is a study partner. What do we know about the timing of the plan? When it will come back to TRPA for what sort of action? And in particular, since we received all the public comment in this EITPO committee, what will be the role of this committee in relation to the overall board in the decision-making process?
Sure, I'm happy to, Madam Chair. Julie, Reagan, Michelle can certainly jump in. We did brief the full board on this corridor, as Michelle mentioned several months ago, and we're working with NDOT to look at how things will evolve under the new leadership in NDOT and in the new administration. So it's definitely of great concern to the community, as you've heard, but we've done a lot of work already with the community as well. So I'll let Michelle speak to like the next steps. It would come back to this board, and it was not agendized today. So there's no action, but we'll certainly take the comments into consideration and they'll be included in the record when we bring it back.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. And I want to thank the public for being here today. And I know it is a very challenging, as somebody just said, this is a very challenging section. We've done a couple corridor plans now together with other agencies, and we are at the point right now, and my apologies, you haven't seen this draft concept that they're speaking about. That hasn't come back to you. That was recently shared, and all of that all those public comments we received this winter, and including these, are still getting folded in. They're just draft concepts right now. It is there are some, NDOT's really concerned about the condition of the highway today, about the safety, about the crashes we're seeing, the severity of those crashes. So they're in a tough spot right now where they know they need to do something. So these concepts are to help actually figure out how we can make things better. And we do want to address the public's concerns on all of those things that they spoke about today. And that's what's going on right now. They're collecting all the public comments we received over the winter. There were a lot of Post-it notes on maps. People were standing around tables and conversing with one another and putting Post-it notes down. So that is where we're at right now, John, is they're developing and really trying to address everyone's concerns in a future concept. So that's, I guess that's probably what I'd like to.
So the NDOT, when you say they.
Forgive me, the project team, yes. I mean, NDOT is the lead on this. It is their right of way, right? And so they're the ones today who are feeling the brunt of some of those safety issues, just like we do.
So what would you recommend what's the best avenue to have to provide this kind of public input in a way that informs the alternatives analysis happening now?
Well, I think that's what's up next, is thinking about another round of public. I'm taking in the feedback I heard today. They didn't like the way it was presented, not feeling like they were heard. So I'm going to bring that back to the project team, which includes us and the consultants and NDOT. So we can try to maybe structure something a little bit better as we further along and fold in these ideas, including the alternative you see before you today. They're analyzing that. They're looking at that concept and also comparing it to the goals of the project that everyone agreed upon in the beginning. Did I answer that, John?
And then I guess just to reiterate the question, is this
Sure.
likely to come back to this particular committee for recommendation to the full board when we get to that point?
Yeah, so I think that originally brought it to the full board. So I don't, maybe that's up for discussion.
I think that's
Julie.
up for discussion. Yep.
Great, thank you. Any additional comments? Okay, seeing none, we will go ahead and take this as an informational item. Obviously, lots of great input was provided on many different topics, so we will be following up on that. Lastly, we're going to go on to agenda item number 4, committee member comments. Do we have any comments from anyone? John, Ailey, Ashley? Okay. And we have no further comments at this time. Our last item on the agenda is public interest comments. We're at a point now where if any member of the public wishes to address the Environmental Improvement, Transportation and Public Outreach Committee, please raise your hand now, either by clicking on the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen or dialing *9 on your phone, and you'll be called upon and unmuted by TRPA staff. So do we have anyone in the room that would like to make public comments on items that have not been heard today? No. Only if it's not on any of the things we've discussed.
If you would like to come to the mic and make that comment, that would be appropriate.
Thank you. Sorry. I need to get as much time as I can because it's so critical about, I'm on the fire board, like they said, with the gentleman that just spoke. The plan will not work. I'm telling you, NDOT. I used a lot of their expertise and talked to the experts. And I'm telling you, even our new governor, I had a special speaking with him and he agrees with the alternative. I can't stress it more. I need to be included. Tahoe Douglas District has to access all of that. We need to be included. We are one of the biggest stakeholders. Excuse me. These people are the biggest stakeholders because if you look in the NDOT plan that they have, their little scope of work, their workbook, you know what they says the biggest stakeholders are? The people that pay for that highway, people who use the highway majority, these people. 60% of the people that live on that highway, they live it, they own it, they breathe it. They buy, you know what's paid for the highway? Gas tax. That's what pays for it. When I was an advisor for 12 years at the legislature, like I had said earlier, I represented this Tahoe Township and the people in it. Also TRPA. I've worked with regulatory agencies my whole life, EPA. One thing about what do we all have in common? The health, welfare, and the safety of the environment and of this community. There's only one solution. If you really want a solution to all your problems, you know what I wish I would have done when I was an advisor back in the day? When they asked me to become a national park, I wish to God I would have done it. Because then you can control the people that are coming in here that are abusing the environment and also our national treasure. What is that? Lake Tahoe, the jewel. And you're right, being a water purveyor and knowing utilities, that was my forte. That is a national treasure. It is the best water in the whole world, along with one other lake, Lake Baikal, which is in where? Siberia, Russia. And they don't even have emissions on that lake where we do. So it goes to tell you the clarity of that lake. And that's what we need to do. And it's so true. You listen to the scientists. I listen to my constituents, which are these people out there. You know why they don't have an outreach program? One of the people on the NDOT project said they don't want to do a large venue like they did in 2017 because of the conflict. Too many pushback. The people don't want it because they know it. They live it. They breathe it. We need to listen to it. Look at the alternative. I'm giving you 4 lanes. Fire department, everybody likes the alternative. If you're going to do anything and you're going to try something, do the alternative. Narrow the lanes, drop the speed limit. At least you'll have a biking, walking path on each side of the highway. It's in the program. A lot of these folks don't even want that. But at least you'll have a center lane that'll divide up the 4 lanes for turning purposes, for safetiness. That is the most safest plan you can have, is the alternative. We did our homework.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we are just about ready for adjournment. However, Julie, I would like you to give you an opportunity to let us know what the meeting schedule looks like for the rest of the day.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My recommendation is, since we are behind, that we just take a couple minute break to have our pick and then take a lunch break if the board is in agreement with that. And then we'll start the main session of the full board.
Okay.
My only question is, does Jim want to stick around that long?
Oh, well, you know what? That is a good question.
Better than Dave.
Okay, Jim, then we'll buy your lunch for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Good one.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Great.
So
All in
moved.
favor? Aye. Okay, I think we're
Aye.
good. Thank you.
Hey, would you like to check your mic?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Kate, I can hear you, but they're on a break to get the next committee together.